Hello, hello, and welcome to Promises Kept, the Bible study where we're taking a look at 150 promises of God, and we're doing this over 5 months. And today we're on Promise of God number 125, which is going to be found in the Proverbs, where we see lots of wisdom. And today's promise verse is pretty familiar. If you are a Christ follower, you've probably heard it before and maybe not recognize there's a promise in there. But if you're not a Christ follower, this is a good verse for you. It's just a good word from the Lord for you to hold on to and hopefully spur you into action. So let's turn to Proverbs chapter 22, and it's verse number 6, which says, "Train up a child in the way he should go, even when he is old, he will not depart from it." So there it is, the promise that if you train up a child in the way he should go, namely the way of God, even when he is old, he will not depart from it. And of course, that he is a she as well. So it says that even when he becomes old, he will not depart from it. Now, I know personally many people who are clinging onto this promise verse because they have children that they have trained up in the way they should go, the ways of the Lord. And these children, as they've gotten older, have decided to stop following the Lord. They've gone their own way, they've gone into the world. In Christianese, we would say they've gone prodigal. They've just gone out there and decided that they want to do their own thing. Well, this promise verse tells you that even when he is old, he will not depart from it. So it means that what you've put in there, what you've trained up your children in, as far as the ways of the Lord, it's implanted in there, and that is not going to change. It's in there. And the promise is that eventually they're going to come around. And it might be even when they're old, much older, but there's the promise. So it's a great promise verse, which tells you, as a Christ follower, all the hard work you're doing with your children, it's not going to return void. And it very well may be that when they become old enough, they're living on their own, that they depart from the Lord. Eventually, everything you've done, it's all in there. They're going to come back around to it. And for somebody, if you're not a Christ follower and you're just thinking, like, what would be the point of taking my kid to church or taking them to Sunday school or whatever, even if you don't believe in Jesus, teaching the ways of Jesus is going to be a good thing. It'll stay in there, and hopefully, it's a promise and an encouragement, that hopefully it'll come back around. That in the end, when they're older, these things are going to stir up in them. Well, for a Christ follower, that means a lot because we're teaching them to follow Jesus. For somebody who's not a Christ follower, it might not mean as much, but still teaching the morality of God, that's something that you want implanted in there, and you hope that it'll stir up and maybe steer them into a right path if they've gone on the wrong path with their life. So I just think it's a good verse for both people, and I think it's really encouraging, to just stay the course with your children. And again, for so many of my friends and people I know personally, the kids have gone astray. They've grown up in families that are following the Lord and love the Lord dearly, but as so often, people rebel when they hit those years of high school, etc., and they rebel from their parents. So as a Christ-following family, many people I know, their kids go off. They go off and decide they're going to try it their own way for a while. And we have a beautiful story. I alluded to it earlier in the proverb in the in the New Testament that talks about this. It's called the prodigal son, where there's a man. He's got two sons, and one of them decides to basically say, Dad, I don't want to be with this family and do things the way this family is doing. I want my inheritance right now, and I'm going to go off and be on my own. And so the father gives it to him, and off the kid goes, and he squanders it on prostitutes and all kinds of manner of not good. And he finds himself with nothing, and he's in a pig trough, basically. He's feeding the pigs, and it just finally hits him. You know, what am I doing? Even the servants in my father's house have it better than I have it out here in the pig trough, and I'm going to go and I'm going to plead for my father to just even treat me like a servant. I'm going to just beg for forgiveness for the way I've treated him. Because in that time, asking for your inheritance now would be like saying you're dead to me. Like I don't care if you're dead or alive, Dad. I want it to be like you're dead. So not very good. So anyway, end of the story is the kid has planned in his head exactly what he's going to say. Well, he's heading towards home, and the father sees him from a distance, and the father hikes up his robe and runs to the kid, and before the kid can even say anything, the father's putting his robe on him and just saying, let's have a celebration because you're back. And it's just a beautiful picture of how God feels about people who have gone astray, who, you know, maybe they knew him, knew his ways, were following him, but they decided for a little bit to just go do their own thing. And when it finally hits them, these imparted words and ways that are in them, it kind of comes back around and hits them. What am I doing? I'm going to turn back to the Lord. Well, the Lord is ready. You know, open arms. He's running to you to welcome you back into following him in the family of God and all that. So it's a beautiful picture, and again, it applies to this, that the stuff that was in there that the father taught this prodigal son, it was in there. It never went. He knew the way of his father was a lot better than the way of the world, which had led him to working in a pig trough. So anyway, encouragement to you, and I hope that you just keep on training up your children in the way of the Lord, knowing that at the end, even when they're old, that stuff is not going to depart from them. And hopefully that will mean that they will come back to following the Lord as you're praying for them to do right now. All right? And that's it for today. Short one, and I'll see you next time. Bye now.